In this video, I'd like to show you how to wet block a blanket. I'm going to discuss everything you need and all the steps involved. So what do you need to wet block a blanket? First of all, you need some kind of underground on which you're going to pin your blanket. I have these foam tiles. These are from a sports store where they use them to put underneath sporting equipment to protect the floor underneath. So these are tiles that you use underneath sports equipment, and they are perfect for blocking larger items because I can easily store these tiles and then just put them together when I need them and make the size that I need for that specific project. So I have a whole stack of these tiles. What you also need, especially for blankets, are blocking pins, but these blockers that you see here from Knit Pro. They're actually about 10 or 12 pins next to one another in one object. So that really makes it easy to pin a blanket down in many positions at the same time, as opposed to one pin at a time. So these are multiple pointed pin blockers. You also need some kind of detergent. I use Eucalan, which is a wool detergent that you can leave in, so you don't have to rinse this detergent out. You can just soak it in the Eucalan water mixture, and then that's it. You don't have to rinse it anymore. What's also very handy is if you're blocking larger items, and especially items such as a blanket that have right corners, is a triangle, because it'll help you to keep those corners straight, because it's surprisingly easy to overstretch a blanket and to get your corners not 90 degrees. So this is everything I use when I wet block a blanket. First step to wet blocking a blanket is running yourself some lukewarm water. So in your sink or any other place where that's easy for you to really soak a large blanket, run yourself some lukewarm water. Add Eucalan. I'm always I use more than less, if I can put it that way. So add lukewarm water and Eucalan, and prepare yourself enough water that you can really soak your blanket in your sink. Step 2 might be obvious, but step 2 is that you really soak your blanket in the water that you just prepared. And really take your time on this, that you get all the water completely through your blanket. You really want to soak it, that your Eucalan can get to all the fibers, and that will help the blanket become soft, and it'll also help it to smell really nice. So take your time, really work it through the water, that it gets soaked through and through. And especially if you have a very large blanket, this can be really heavy work, because after all, it becomes a very heavy blanket with all that water in there. And at a certain point when you think, okay, this blanket is soaked through and through, pull the plug on the sink, so remove the plug that the water can run away, and then just squeeze the excess water out of your blanket, because that'll make it easier for the next step of the process, when we're going to just remove a little bit of the water from the blanket. Step 3 of the blanket entails spinning your blanket. So pop your blankets in the washing machine, and the washing machine is really ideal for this. Set the washing machine to your lowest possible spin cycle. So for me, my washing machine's lowest setting is 400 RPM. And if you have a lower setting, that's even better. So as low as possible. Let your washing machine spin. And this takes some time. At a certain point, it's finished. And then we can continue with the rest. The final step of the process means actually building our blocking mat. So that's what I'm doing here, and I'm doing this outside because the sunshine really dries the blanket nice and fast. So I always block outside whenever possible. So build your blocking mat from the tiles and build it to the size that you need. So if you have a small blanket, I mean, this goes fast, but if it's a large blanket, it just takes you a few minutes to build your underground. And when you've done that, we can move on to the next step, which is actually blocking the blanket itself. When your underground is finished, you can start blocking your blanket. And this means pinning your blanket down exactly in the shape that you need it. As I said before, these large triangles are ideal for blocking a blanket, and I'd like to show you how I use them. I use these triangles to really align my two edges of the corner so that I make sure I have a 90-degree right angle corner on my blanket, because it's surprisingly easy to overstretch that your corner is actually larger than 90 degrees. So these triangles are just ideal for straight corners. And then it's just important to get busy and really block and line up your blanket. This takes a lot more time than you might think. It can easily take 15 to 20 minutes to really align a blanket properly until all the corners are straight and just the blanket looks exactly the way you want it. Because it's important that you only stop with your blocking process with the pins in place, putting everything in place when the blanket is in the shape and the size that you want it to be. Because when it's dry, that's the shape that it's going to have. And then let it dry. That's a case of time again, especially if it's in the sun, it goes fast. And when it's dry, carefully remove your blocking pins, because otherwise you could damage the blanket, so really remove them carefully. And when you're finished, your blanket is all done, and it will look beautiful and straightened out, and it'll be really putting just that extra bit of quality on your work, this whole blocking process.